So there are 4 kind of early season tactics that seem to come up every year on the podcast as I roll through guests, and we're going to walk through a few of those today, and I hope they help if you guys are trying to figure out what you're going to do this early season. You know, a lot of just to clarify, early season for me is basically anything ahead of October 10th or so. So for a lot of states that open October 1st, you got about 10 days to work through these tactics, maybe 15 or so, depending on where you're at. But then also for other states, like here in Wisconsin, we open mid-September, and other states even sooner than that, you know, early September. So these tactics can certainly work all around. So hopping into them, first and foremost, observation sits. Those seem to come up every year. They're really strong. Getting out and doing observation sits or scouting sits, where you can really just kind of glass a field or glass an area from afar and understand what they're doing, because of a pattern, right? In the early season, a lot of deer have patterns. They go from A to B and A to B basically every day, every other day, or a general area to another general area. So if you can understand that pattern from an observation sit, then you can go in, move in, get close, and hopefully get set up within 30, 40 yards of that deer and be able to get a shot. Now, that one of the things that has come up on that tactic specifically is you really need multiple days to hunt. If you're doing an observation sit in season, you need 3-4 days to hunt. That way you can sit, and then go kill. Like that'd be an ideal scenario where you got 3-4 days to hunt. Otherwise, if you're glassing before season, right, you got to glass, and then opener comes along, and then you can go in and kill. So ideal scenarios, you have multiple days in a row with similar weather conditions, so the deer are doing similar things, and they keep that pattern that you're looking for. A lot of times for me personally, I know I get 1 day here, 1 day there. I get to scout this day, I get to scout that day. So that tactic doesn't work extremely well for me, and instead I'll roll trail cameras. At the same time, trail cameras only give you more information than nothing, but they certainly don't cover everything like an observation sit would. All right, so first and foremost, scouting, glassing, observation sits. Second, acorns. Acorns are obviously big for public and private land food sources, really, but acorns, because you got acorns and food plots. Not everyone has food plots. Acorns can be a phenomenal food source in the early season. It's basically a natural food plot. You can go get those on public land, on private land, and I've had people on the guests on the podcast say they'll walk through a food plot to go to acorns and eat those before they come back out to the food plot or back out to the cornfield to feed at night. In a lot of seasons, the soybeans are yellow by the time season even starts. So, you know, we're getting all this footage of glassing bucks in these soybeans, but you know, come season, that doesn't even matter because the soybeans are yellow and the deer aren't in them anymore. They're changing their pattern, and before they're hitting all that corn, or they might move to corn egg fields right away, but a lot of them will move to those acorns. And plus, the other nice thing about acorns is a lot of times they're in secluded areas, so deer are more likely to daylight in those secluded areas, just because they're secluded there. It's less obvious to a lot of hunters who are just hunting field edges. All right, so acorns and food plots, definitely go check those out if you got good spots. You know, go check. Talking to Zach Fehrenbaugh from the Hunting Public, if he gets on a piece and he's scouting a piece, he will go check everywhere where he thinks there's acorns and then find the freshest sign, which basically he's looking for rubs in the early season and potentially a scrape or so. And from there, that's where he's setting up. If you have, 10 different spots, 10 different like oak flats, he's finding the ones that are the hottest and then setting up there. So you got to do a little bit of scouting there as well. Which leads me to my next one, which would be early season scrapes. Scrapes can be phenomenal early season. If deer are on a pattern, they are hitting a scrape, they are trying to establish dominance right away, you can certainly catch deer on scrapes in the early season. They use them year round. A lot of people, that's still not as well known as a fact, but deer will use scrapes all year round, and especially if it's a solid scrape. And there's only specific ones, like those field edge scrapes that you pop up on public land or private ground where you're like, holy shit, here's a giant scrape line. Like that usually isn't very productive in the early season, but it's the ones that are back secluded, tend to be close to acorn flats or oak flats, tend to be close to a food source, but in a secluded area where multiple trails converge. Those areas are annual scrapes that are open year round, and deer, does, and bucks will hit them. And if you can find that in an early season pattern, a lot of those you're going to need to set trail cameras on. Cell cams in that scenario are extremely effective, and you can catch those bucks. Like, if he's hitting a scrape every other day, I mean, you are in the money. like if you can get in there on a good wind in the right scenario and be very precise and what's the word, intentional with your hunt, you can be very effective in that. Dog here is just trying to get running, so I'm going to take a couple steps here. So yeah, early season scrapes can be a phenomenal option. And then lastly, again on the podcast, this is something I've never done, but the old bump and dump. Hunting Public does it. I know a few other guys who've done it and they've had success. Extremely aggressive tactic, but at the same time, if you are out, you got your bow, season's on, you're trying to find a spot, you bump a nice buck, you bump an area, you start pushing into a bedding area or something like that, you bump that deer out, right? The next step is to not just, oh, my hunt's canceled, I'm done, I'm toast, like might as well just leave. The next step is to watch where that buck goes, take a minute, back up, get the wind direction in your favor, set up right in that area, and that buck may come back even that night right away, or the next morning when he's coming back to bed, he might come right back to that same bed, or even the next evening, he might be in that general area. You may be able to catch him coming out of that exact same area. The old bump and dump can work. Like I said, it's an extremely aggressive tactic. You may push them into the next county, or you may push them, right into your shooting lane the next night. So those are just 4 tactics that over years of doing the podcast, hunting myself and talking to a whole bunch of people, that seem to be effective in the early season, and hopefully it can inspire you guys to, if you're trying to figure out what you're going to do, maybe one of those will fit the scenario that you're in. All right, hope it helps everyone.